Right. And you could tell, once there's a bunch of people, then you could say the same thing. What's the thing? One's gonna say sour gum, I heard.
Boca Talk. So I think I'm standing closer to our online audience than to you, but in order to be the cameras view it here, so.
Yeah.
So you have a handout that, while it does not cover all the questions that might come up, it does make an attempt to cover many of them, and especially some of the top contenders for one's interest. But basically, I'll go through the topics mostly in the order that they're presented. So one of the key general principles in the kashering for Pesach is clean. Like get your item that you want to kasher to be clean. Very often, to leave it stay for 24 hours unused. That changes the status of any flavors that may have been absorbed by the item, whether it be a pot or silverware, etc. And then after waiting those 24 hours, we proceed with the appropriate mode of kashering. So if we start with our stoves, at least here in Century Village, we all have electrical stoves, one format or another. And so here, listed first is the model that has exposed coils. When we talk about a stove top, so we are talking about the coils, whether they be exposed or whether they be covered by like a glass top, stove top. But in either case, we're talking about the coils, and then we're talking about the rest of the space in a different category, the rest of the space of the stovetop, because the coils we can heat up very hard. I mean, it's true. There's no shortage of different viewpoints on how to handle many of the Hasidic questions that come up. So, maybe what I share with you is what your orientation has been already. Maybe one of us has a different view. Certainly, when it comes to the glass top stovetops, there are some differing opinions on it. Mine would probably be placed in the more lenient view of using it. But what we have in common is that depending upon what the material is for the space around or in between the actual sources of heat, so depending upon what they're made out of, that guides us whether they really can be kashered or whether we have to design maneuvers that allow us to use the coils, and in some fashion, maybe using the space to put certain things and be consistent with the halacha. So first of all, we're talking about the exposed coils. So again, we want to do our cleanup. While the coils themselves will totally burn and destroy any chametz that might be on them, although it's not, especially if it's something that's really so visible and you see, it probably should be taken off, so we don't have to deal with the question whether the whole thing was burnt or not. But you have your wells that should be cleaned. All stove tops, you want to make sure the knobs are clean. Often, those are places that can gather real chametz. So we're going to require on the areas that are not the coils. So they should be like unused for 24 hours. So if you might normally, place a hot pot or food wrapped in aluminum foil or something, you're resting it in those spaces, that should be avoided for the 24 hours. To clean the surface and to wait 24 hours. And then the question is really what material that non-coil part of the stovetop is made of. So if it's enamel, we don't kasher enamel, but we can cover enamel. Recommended, 2 layers of silver foil, better if it's a heavy duty silver foil. It could well be that foil is not going to last all of Pesach. Maybe it'll get torn, maybe it'll get soiled. It can be changed more easily on the Chol HaMoed than on Yom Tov. And if you're concerned about it, you might want to rip some sheets of foil in advance, just in case you feel you want to put it down over the schmutzidik foil. So you could do that. If it's made of stainless steel, you can kasher it by really. The text they use the word hagala, which is sort of like a bigger title. Maybe more technically, hagala is when we were immersing something in to a pot of boiling water, and really iru is when we're pouring out something that was just being boiled. So one could kasher that. One might want to entertain actually using the same method for the enamel top, because spilling hot water on surfaces is not necessarily the easiest thing to do. And when basically we have 2 particular areas that many people do pour boiling water on, and that would be the stovetop and countertops. But you have to be careful using boiling water, and sometimes it might be safer just to cover the surfaces and not to use the boiling water. That's something for you to decide. If you are pouring boiling water, whether it is on countertops, which you'll spend more time on later, or whether it's the stovetop, you want to limit the range that the water can travel. Like, you don't necessarily want the water rolling off the countertop, especially if it might roll on top of your foot. So maybe have some towels that you set somehow so that you're blocking the boiling water. You might, if you can work with a partner, that would be really good. It helps to accomplish those things in a safer manner, I think. And so for the stainless stovetop, one could cover it also with this sealant foil, or you can, and there it's like, you have the added concern if your water goes too far, it's going into where the mechanism is. You want to try to avoid that. But it can be kashered with boiling water. With the glass tops, while there are opinions, and including, and I do subscribe to them, that the coils themselves can be kashered, because they will be heated to a very high degree, and that's the type of glass that it is. But we don't have that ability to burn the rest of the stovetop. So the rest of the glass stovetop, basically needs to be treated in terms of a category like the enamel top. But unlike enamel, you can't cover the whole thing with silver foil, where you run a very significant risk of cracking your stovetop. So I'm not sure I claim that I learned that one from personal experience, but a couple of other warnings will be special personal experiences, which I hope that you won't have to experience. So when after we've done our cleaning, now for burning the coils themselves, you don't need to wait 24 hours. If we're kashering, a surface like the stainless steel, the The glass top, we really don't kasher with the boiling water, but in case anything goes wrong, it could serve as one of a few sources of leniency, so that we don't say, like, if there's like a whole, side of chicken fell on the glass top, so that then you'd have and it's hot. The chicken's hot, so even though the stove top's not hot, but you have significant heat, it was just cooked, and so you could have a question whether or not you're allowed to eat that on Pesach at that point. So in dealing with that question, it would be easier if we, actually, did boiling water on that stovetop. People often want to use the surface of the stovetop as working surface. So in that case, what's advisable is to get some type of trivets that you can put on the non-coiled part of the stovetop, or I guess on coils that you're not using and never intend to use, so you don't make a mistake and have something that's combustible on it. But so if you want to remove the pot from the coil, that you have a place to put it down if you want a closer work area of the stovetop itself. Anything up? I'll discuss the warm spot in a second. Any questions up till now? Okay. So the hot or the warm spot that's on the stove. Now we have a general principle. Sometimes we borrow it from the strict realm to some other realms, but in Kasher, like we say, kibo the way something absorbs like a flavor that we really didn't want it to absorb, or at least now we don't want it because it's chametz, even though it was perfectly fine, we used it before Pesach. But we're doing something we're removing something the same way that that the item absorbed it. And that general rule, like it has been applied by poskim for something like the hot spot. Like the hot spot is not going to reach the same temperature as the coils, but it also hasn't been used at the same temperature that the coils are. They're not, here in most cases, as far as I know, we have to reach those kind of temperatures.
What do you consider a hot spot?
Sometimes it's like usually like a small circle in the glass top stove.
On top of the stove, not in.
Correct, on top of it. It's all, we're only talking about tops of stoves right now, even though they're often anchored on top of an oven. But just talking about the stove itself. So on the glass top stove, there's an area like it's a warming type of thing, I guess keep something going for a little longer, but not with the same intensity of the heat. And so that would be. I want to go back just over the duration, so that of the regular coils, but here, since we're talking about the hot spot, so for the hot spot we'd let it burn for an hour. But the coils, which will literally get red hot, so you don't need that to last that long. The coils I put down here 10 minutes. At most, only do 1 or 2 coils simultaneously. If you do more, you run the risk of messing up the thermostat, which you definitely don't want to do a couple of days before, or even a week before Pesach. You don't really want to do that, right? And also, it's advisable. I didn't suffer this lesson, but others shared with me, is that if you have cabinets, drawers, on either side of your stovetop or oven, when we get up to ovens, so it's advisable to open those doors, because not they could be subject to some discoloration from the intense heat that's going to take place. The coils, because they do get red hot. It's sort of referred to this briefly earlier. Technically, they don't need the 24-hour wait time, because this is like a real lever at the highest form of burning. So the warm spot on its own temperature for an hour on its highest temperature, and the coils themselves, once they turn red, 7 to 10 minutes. So let's move on to ovens. So I started in the handout listing non-self-cleaning. By the way, those who are watching on Zoom, participating by Zoom, if you have a question, not all of you were on when Andrea made the announcement, so you could unmute yourselves, ask your question, and then remute. Once upon a time, there was like just one kind of self-cleaning process, but now there are multiple processes that people call self-cleaning. But halakhically, the self-cleaning that we're talking about, that is a great aid in koshering, is a self-cleaning process that uses a very high level of temperature. In fact, I think, and I know I don't have so much personal experience with the different levels, but I think the traditional self-cleaning reached 150 degrees temperature. So it's pretty hot. There are other kind of self-cleanings that one fashion that uses steam and another that just uses water, and those will not kasher your oven. They will halachically clean your oven, but or greatly help in cleaning the oven. But if you're not using a real intense heat method, that you have to treat it as a non-self-cleaning oven. In all cases, the oven should be examined to see what needs to be cleaned. Even on the self-cleaning oven, like you usually, there's a bunch of old food in the back. Don't leave that for the self-clean. Wipe it out. Get rid of it. Particularly, pay attention to the window. That it's clean and nothing is stuck there. So on the non-self-cleaning, or the cleaning that has steam or water, like you could use that to do your cleaning. If you're often you may need some kind of cleanser. They should always be consistent with manufacturer recommendations. And so we use that, we clean, and after we clean, so we let the oven rest for 24 hours without being used, at least without being used for heat. If you need to store something in there, you need to put a pot there or something. The pot's clean, and not putting any heat on anything, so you could do that. But not using it for cooking, for warming, etc. So if one has, I don't know, because if someone's buying a stove, an oven today, I'm not sure what the percentage of frequency would be about having a separate broiler unit. I don't know, anybody know, just out of curiosity, anybody know? Like, it's like when in the later the newer models, do they still do broilers separate component on the bottom? Yeah, but many might still have that. So if you, like what's in the handout was really put down talking about the oven versus the broiler. So which has to be modified for all of us, for those of us who have just one unit, and if they have anything on the bottom, maybe it's a warming drawer, maybe it's a towel drawer, but it's not a broiler. But if the broiler is separate, so the oven guidelines is that after we clean it, after we let it rest for 24 hours, again, to let the non-halachically self-cleaning ovens, then it should burn at 550 for an hour. If you do it, will anybody here have the separate broiler unit? Anybody at home have the broiler? Okay, so then I'll skip. I'll just be very, very brief about it. What's challenging about the broiler, a couple of things that are challenging. Number one is that it's a small space and it's hard to clean. And especially maybe for us that to get down, it's a challenge to clean. And then if you really use the broiler, maybe it was originally intended that you're broiling stuff right on the broiler pan itself. And if it was chametz that was used, so now you have, you would need a very high level of kashering, probably like a blowtorch, which I do not advise anybody to, unless that's like part of your profession and you have experience with a blowtorch. It can be time consuming, and the less time consuming is, meaning the bigger the flame you have, the more the precaution needs to take place. But if somebody does have it, so there are ways of trying to make it work, but the biggest challenge is to make sure that it is clean. So the self-cleaning, also continuous clean oven, is not a self-cleaning oven. So you have to treat it as a non-self-cleaning oven. I'm on page 2, a quarter way down the page, begins a short section on self-cleaning. So we discuss that. So you can once you just wipe it out, you don't necessarily have to wait for 24 hours, and you run the clean heat cycle. Now racks can be kashered in the self-cleaning cycle, but you do run the risk, maybe even a probability that they will dull in color. So if they're not already that way, and you do care about them, you want to keep their luster, so you could kasher them separately, take them out during the self-clean, and then after the oven is kashered, you could set it at 550, which according to sources that I read, will not discolor the racks. So you can put the racks in and run the oven for an hour on 550 to kasher the racks. I think if I remember correctly, notes from some of our participants from the past is that it's good to put some olive oil, or maybe some other type of oil, but not necessarily sewing machine oil. I don't even know when. Do it before the process or after, before you try to take them out. So who's done that? Who could shed light on? Okay. Something you might want to look into. It makes it easier to get the racks out after they swell from the heat. Question? Okay. Warming drawers. Again, some discussion, on them, but we follow the basic formula. Clean well. Let stand 24 hours not being used. Burn it on the highest temperature for 2 hours. Some are machmir. I did not include this in the guidelines, but some are machmir. They use externals for burning it to increase some of the heat. It is it is best to at least line the bottom with silver foil, for use during Pesach, and if it's going to hold, to manage it, to do the sides as well, would be preferable. A hot plate. The hot plate's going to go back in terms of like some guidelines, like to the hot spot, the warming spot on a glass top stove. It's going to be similar to that. So we're going to clean it well. Again, a note to use an approved cleaner by manufacturer's design. After clean, we let it rest for 24 hours without being used. And then we leave it on its highest setting for an hour. If the surface allows, cover it with silver foil, so it's another level. But again, if you're using a more modern hot plate, then you cover it with silver foil. I believe it has the same risk of cracking as the stove tops. It could crack with a large piece of foil over it. But I don't know that anybody does this, but with the kashering process that we're going through, and especially if we're not putting silver foil on top of it, food should not be, placed directly. If food should be wrapped or a pot or something to be heated up. A little bit challenging, but certainly I would think that a pretty significant percentage of our population have microwave ovens. So again, clean well. Use a cleanser if it's necessary. Be sure to check the fan vents. Make sure you check like the rooftop to see what needs to be cleaned. And we wait 24 hours. And the next step is it says to remove the glass tray. That primarily is because we really can't kasher the glass tray. So we're gonna have to do something with it or have an alternative. So probably that's why the recommendation is to remove it during the process. It might a little bit have to do with the actual steps of kashering, which is listed next. What we're going to kasher the microwave. Here we do use steam to kasher the microwave. I don't think typical household steamers can even reach a level that might be okay for a microwave, but maybe I don't know. But a traditional way of kashering the microwave is to take a receptacle listed here as a styrofoam cup. We're going to have to do this twice, but we should use a different cup each time because at some point it's the styrofoam can give way to the intense heat. So we don't want to use the same cup twice. Please, in general, be very careful in handling the hot water. We're going to heat up water. If you want to maybe shorten the amount of time that it takes to heat to boiling, you could start off with hot water that you're getting from someplace else. If it doesn't mess up your plan, like when we want to kasher a sink for Pesach, and we're not using the sink with hot water, so we might not be able to get that hot water, but you can get it from the bathroom, or you can get it from an urn, that whatever. So that should cut down the timing. Sorry for the moments of silence. I just to myself. So we want to generate the steam in the microwave to kasher the microwave with steam. So one should take, let's say, that styrofoam cup and put it, let's start off with a little bit off the center, like closer to one side of the microwave, not up to the side, but closer to it. And we're going to repeat that on the other side and do something similar, so that we hope that because of that the steam that will emanate will actually cover, all the areas of the microwave. So yes.
Styrofoam. What's wrong with a regular coffee cup? I mean, the disposable coffee cups.
Yeah, I think whatever is used, somebody often has a comment like, don't use a ceramic. I've heard different advocacies for what to be used. When I thought about this, I think last night, I said, you know what, I might, if I had the cardboard coffee cup, I might lean to using that. So I think what you want to be careful about is we're going to let that cup we're gonna set the microwave so that it, we're gonna look in, like maybe leave the light on so you can see what's happening, that we want to see that steam is being produced. So whether that's the 10 minutes or because you started out with hot water, it's only, 7 minutes, or it's gonna be 12 minutes. But at some point, you're gonna be convinced that that side of the microwave has done its job, and you're gonna want to take that cup out. Be very careful, right?
It's melting. It's half a cup, third of the cup.
In styrofoam, you say. Okay, so you might want, and then, so you might want to put, let's say, a double cardboard cup even, but you want to, like, maybe you can't take it out right away. You gotta, feel it carefully first, how hot it is to you, because you don't want to, like, startle yourself and then drop the cup, God forbid, and then you have a mess, if not worse. Karen.
Okay, so. The way this is phrased, this should require approximately 10 minutes of actual boiling time. So even if you're starting with boiling hot water, it sounds like you still need to let it boil and get it going.
Right, so that's why, yeah, good point, thank you, is, keep an eye, see when it starts producing,
So, yeah,
steam.
which is really very, very difficult to do. You really can't do it without opening the door. No, you can't do it. No, it doesn't, yeah, most microwaves you can't.
So at some point you open it and see,
Right.
maybe you feel,
But, so when I did that, okay, I haven't tried my new microwave yet, but on my old one, the water was completely evaporated, so I can't do it. And so obviously it was steaming, but.
okay, all right, so then you have, clear proof that,
Yeah,
that it went to work, right?
oh, no, but my question was, so let's say you use a large cardboard cup, so it doesn't evaporate. Can you put one on your side?
The recommendation is specifically one at a time. Exactly why, and I've seen it in different sources. Maybe remind me, I don't want to take time now, especially,
Yeah,
but maybe remind me, and I'll look into the OU booklet, I have it here, to see, what they say, if they say, a similar thing, we'll check it out. But it seems to be standard. Yeah, I'm not sure why. Maybe it's too overwhelming having both of them go. I don't know. We'll try to take a look at that. And if you do it at different time, one after the other, again, be careful. Maybe you can't take the cup out right away, and don't use the same cup again. Oh, so now you need to do something about that glass top. So either you could have a separate Pesidic, glass for your microwave. That's option number one. Option number two is it's recommended if you buy like some styrofoam, or maybe you even have it coming in some kind of package that's being delivered to your house that has some styrofoam in it. You could cut something, about the right size, and they say even if it's just a quarter of an inch thick, it's pretty good. And you have a temporary tray during Pesach, or you take the glass, and even though, especially for Ashkenazim, we don't really kasher glass, but similar to what I said about pouring the water over like the glass stovetop, for example. Is that we do take steps to make answering a shaila easier if something should go a little bit more kelvin during Pesach. So we would go through the procedure of pouring water over that glass, and after that to cover it in some manner. So saran wrap, piece of cardboard that you have, maybe you want to prepare, once you're cutting, maybe you want to prepare a couple of pieces in case you have to change it. Solenoid, you could cut also, and change it. So So we do the boiling water, but we're not going to put things directly on the glass surface itself. And saran wrap, the cardboard, have been popular suggestions along with the piece of styrofoam. If there are metal grates in the microwave, so they should be a clean 24-hour wait, and then you pour boiling water. Any questions on this information? Okay. Countertops. Page 3. So, a lot of countertops, as a brand and as a material, do qualify for being kasher for Pesach. And the last page in your packet has a pretty long list. And that list, the source of it is at the bottom in the CRC, which has great resources. The OU has great resources. But like if you have something that's not on the list, you could go, because this list is from a couple of years ago, but it's a pretty long list. But if for some reason you have some material that's not here, go on. Maybe it's been updated. Maybe it'll be on the list. So number one, if you're interested in, there's no chiyuv. It's not an obligation that you have to kasher the countertops. People who do it, they do it because that's their preference. Either because sometimes covering takes longer than you think. You have to get it to size and whatever it might be. Some people have something that they say from year to year, and it's already pre-measured, makes it a lot easier. Then again, we don't have so much storage space in Century Village to hold something that we just use for 8 days a year, or a little bit more if we prepare in advance. So, and again, it does involve working with boiling water. So, so covering is not a bad idea. But so for those who want to kasher the countertop, so number one is that we check whether the material is a material that can be kasher. It's a pretty generous list. Again, there are a few examples in categories given on page 3 in the handout, but you have that last page that has that longer list that just make sure you look at it carefully. The list as acceptable or not acceptable, right? Yeah, they have some notations with it. Yeah, so they have some you can't kasher, but it's very few. It's like literally a handful, maybe 6 or 7. Can't be kashered, and but it's still a long list. So number one, is it even a candidate to be kashered, which many will be, and then even if it is a candidate to be kashered, the question is, how much wear and tear does it have? Does it have seams that are opening up, and it could be that some chametz fell into it? That wouldn't disqualify it from being kashered, but we don't want somehow any of those crumbs. Like for sure, there's no question in my mind that we make our bitul. We really don't care. We're not thinking that we're going to want to have a snack with some chametz thick of crumbs coming out of the seams in between my countertop. So our bitul is pretty effective there. But you would take some masking tape and put it over the seam if it's something that has opened up somewhat and not have the funnels there, just so nothing gets mixed up, or some water doesn't spill and then it brings something up and something. We want to avoid that. Pesach, we want to avoid even the smallest amounts of comments. Okay. Counting up questions? Okay. Sinks. So the easiest thing I think to deal with is, well, maybe it's not the easiest, but if you have a material such as the stainless steel or anything that you get Korea, so you could check that same list for the countertops. You could check to see if you have a material with a sink that's on that list, then it's kasherable. So that gives you the alternative the choice to kasher. For those who have sinks that can't be kasher, like if it's, I don't know, did they ever have enamel sinks like in the early condos here, where they always have stainless steel? Okay, doesn't mean maybe somebody put in at some point, whatever. But it's like if you have a material that can't be kasher, so we're going to try to line the sink as best as possible and to use a tub. So again, maybe some people might prefer that. I guess, and they may prefer it because it's less handling of hot water, for kashering. But on the other hand, not that I would push somebody into doing this if they, were reluctant to manipulate the hot water. But we're all using our sinks. If we're eating in our condos, we're using our sinks. So it's a good thing. And if you try to line it, often the liners don't last, so long. But if you have dish pans, so they do. But so those are either kashering it or dish pans. If you have a hot water spigot on your sink, like that should first, again, general rules. We have to clean and let it sit for 24 hours. During the 24 hours, we don't want to use hot water in that sink. Cold water we can use. We don't want to use hot water or throw, hot, so much thicker stuff, into the sink. I put a little sign up on on the faucet, not to turn on the hot water. Some people like to turn off the hot water valve to be sure. Again, not necessarily easy as they should reach. It can be done. Somebody in recent years recommended that if you are going to try to close that switch, take some WD-40 first and spray the valve, the connection, so to avoid causing any dripping. I think is what could be alleviated by taking that precaution, or use the sign to remind ourselves and others of not using the hot water. But if you have a hot water spigot, so that should be the first thing to kasher. We're going to be kashering with boiling water. We want to make sure there are some references. I'm not sure. Well, certainly if we're talking about silverware or kasher, some other things, sometimes we use the expression "a big pot." Which is often true, but what we're talking about, we want to make sure we can handle it. So if we're talking about a big pot, we have to be able to carry it from the sink where we filled it up with water and bring it to the stove. And at some point, even though it may get a little bit lighter from the steam that's been generated, gone into the air, but at some people who let it cool down, and we still have to carry it back. So that's a practical consideration. And if you're using pots, let's say if you are kashering countertops, you want to use pots that are easy to hold and to manage. So you don't want a really heavy pot, so you may want to have more than one smaller pot to make to make it lighter. And so you have that water being prepared, and again, from your bathroom, you could take hot water to begin with and cut down the time for the boiling. But so if you have a hot water spigot, turn that on, let that run for 10 to 15 seconds, and while it's running, take some boiling water from the top of it and pour it over. And then the next thing to kasher would be the faucet. So with your hot water to pour over the faucet, and then we go to kashering the sink, and we have to do it methodically, so we cover all spots. And the final component of the sink is the drain mechanism. So usually they're metal. So if you can clean it well, you could kasher it with hot water, and if not, you could buy a new one. Any questions on sinks? So let's talk about on page 4, kashering by Hagala, boiling water. So again, whatever you would, what are some of the things that you might be kosher with boiling water? You know, where we're putting something into the pot of boiling water.
Kiddush cup.
Okay. I just want to get, so you help, hear some of my comments. So, Kiddush cup, silverware, um. Yeah, Hagala has a property that, in the end, well, first of all, let's go back to the general rule. Clean well, okay? If you are kashering silverware, and especially if it comes to something like a fork, or if you have a pattern at the top of the utensil that is filigree, has openings in it, if it doesn't have openings in it, you want to make sure everything is clean. And and then you could put it, into the pot. The one of the advantages of this process, in contradistinction to one like we want to be toggled a new vessel, is that when we toggle something in the mikveh or a lake or ocean, so what we toggle has to be 100% submerged simultaneously. And we can't really hold on if we're trying to hold on to it, we loosen our grip a little bit, then grip it back, because it doesn't need so much time, but it has to be, the water has to reach both surfaces of the item being toggled simultaneously. That's not the requirement by Hagala. By Hagala, if I have a big, let's say, serving fork, and it doesn't fit into, I can't get it to fit into my pot. But the pot is big enough that I could put half of it in and then turn it over, and do the other half. So then you can kasher in halves, but you can't toggle, in halves. When the pot that one uses is a clean pot that hasn't been used for 24 hours. So it could be milk, it could be flesh, it could be something that was hummus, that you have to use it for 24 hours. It's been clean for the 24 hours. So you have a lot of choices, to make of potentially of the pot that you want to use. The traditionally we once the utensil is kashered, we take it out and rinse it under cold water immediately, and then put it someplace to dry, to be dried. The process does require the water to be boiling, so it's not as if you can get boiling water and turn off the oil. It has to be constantly boiling, and if it could be like by silverware, sometimes it might be a little bit difficult to take each piece out by itself and rinse it under cold water. You might like take a few pieces at a time, but we have to keep our eyes open. Is that even if it's just one piece after the other, each time we put something into the water, potentially it's causing the water temperature to drop, just a little bit, it's going to drop. But if for some reason our water has stopped boiling, we have to wait till it reboils before we continue with the process. And if we are leaving anything in the pot, we just have to make sure again that every I guess whether it's a kiddush cup or it's a fork or a knife, spoon, is that it's totally submerged. And not that I had 3 other pieces that are at the bottom of the pot, and this one on top of it, and part of it is sticking out. So you got to compensate for that. Doesn't have to stay in too long, but for a few seconds is fine. Any questions on that? Okay. Comment on refrigerator and freezers. truthfully, I grew up, that we always covered with shelves in the refrigerator. But it's actually not required and it's sometimes not advisable. So if you have, graded shelves in the refrigerator, so air circulation is very important. And if you do want to cover your shelves, so then you should perforate it, and if you, whatever you're using, to make sure that there is that air circulation. But what's really needed in the refrigerator and the freezer is just make sure that they're cleaned out. And that could be, it could be things that we, once you take the vegetable drawer out, you see something leaked on top, you have stuff underneath, or half a cookie fell, whatever it might be. So just, there's no 24-hour wait time here, just to clean it up. Any questions on that? If you have glass, solid glass shelves, so then the refrigerator has been designed to deal with the proper circulation. So if you want to line those shelves, it's, you could, from a practical point of view, you can do it if you want. But don't have to, but you can do it if you want. Okay, it's 8 minutes approximately to 12. Any questions you want to ask me? Guess you know where to find me, more or less. Anybody online with questions? Look at all, mostly satisfied customers, or at least not questioning.
Bigger question, Rabbi, bigger question is, once we start cleaning, and it isn't quite Pesach, how do we manage everything that's half done, half not done, without making ourselves totally nuts?
I think we have to have a balabuster answer that. Listen, you have to be practical about it. It's like if you have, let's say you kashered one counter in the kitchen, and you have one or two others that aren't yet kashered.
But then somebody else puts something on what you just cleaned, and then you want to just.
Okay, so take some newspaper and or silver foil or saran wrap, and cover a garbage bag. And cover it up. You just have to be practical about it. It's a big job getting ready for Pesach, so not everything could take place, all at once.
Right.
Unless in your basement, you have.
Yeah, we have a lot of those in Century
Right.
Village, right?
So, but otherwise, it is a little bit of
I'm
a.
glad we've got kitchens.
And then some people want to be kosher to Pesach, for 70, X number of days before Pesach, is starting, or even Erev Pesach. Some people have already given up eating chametz in the house. So that's also could be part of the strategy. But if you have worked hard, even sometimes I think there are people, once they clean something up, they don't want anybody else making a mess. So it's whether it be chametz or not chametz, just don't want any kind of mess. So. Hopefully some type of sign, and if not a sign, so actual coverage to help protect what you've already prepared. Okay, well, thanks for joining. And I wish you all Chag Kasher v'Sameach. If questions come up, feel free to contact me.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, bye-bye.